rushing air snatching away all speech quieter than a shout directly in an ear makes conversation difficult. After a while it becomes too much of a distraction anyway, and you surrender to the white noise of the engine and the silence of your thoughts. By the end of the trip, you should be in the proper spirit to submit to the spell of Matagorda Island.
We had students out here sometimes who just Dwayne say, "Do you hear that?" Yes, that's the freeway.
It's a freeway, that's what they say.
City kids, city kids. It does sound like the freeway. No? This is what we have for our landscape on the island, the clouds.
Matagorda Island sits just off the middle Texas coast between Rockport and Port O'Connor, 26 miles of nature accessible only by boat. Doc and Martha lived on Matagorda for 10 years, exploring, documenting, and teaching. And there, together, they literally wrote the book, or shall we say books, on the Texas Barrier Island.
I don't know why people don't use that in their gardens here. That's a beautiful little thing with a little timber.
Oh, that grass?
Yeah, it's not grass, but you see, don't say grass to us.
Don't say grass.
It's not a grass.
How do you tell a sedge from a grass?
Sedges have edges.
Looks like pretty good sand for them.
Yeah, it does.
Here's what we're looking for.
Let me get out of the light.
That's a highly modified little crab called a mole crab. It sits right here in the surf where I'm standing. He waits for a wave to come in, and then when the wave goes back out, that's when he comes to the top, puts his little antennae out, and they form a basket. And they sieve the plankton out of the water as the water flows back. And by the time he eats that, another wave has come in and another cycle starts. These little fellows can be out here by the hundreds and hundreds. They're perfect bird food.
He moved out here in 1993. It was easy for me. I had always wanted to live here where I could get to the beach easy. He was reluctant, but that's just because he doesn't like to do new things. But
I don't believe we would have come if it were up to me. Mm-hmm. Quite a change. I mean, you put all your stuff in the back of a beat-up pickup and go out and go across the way in a boat, and you end up here at the buildings, and it's so different. This is just a different environment entirely, and when you think about it, it's a little scary. Here you are out here on this little strip of shell and sand. If something comes up, a rattlesnake bite or a hurricane, you're in trouble. You remember a time I threw the wrong switch and flooded the whole hangar with diesel fuel?
You knocked on my door and your eyes were this big.
Well, man, I didn't know what to do.
Another reason people aren't really meant to live out here is the water problem.
Then there's a time when they came out to inspect our water situation and were so appalled they were about to quit. When good old Norman came up and said, well, he found a dead coon in the water cistern. Maybe that had something to do with it. I used to ask kids when they come out here what they think the most dangerous part of the island is. And they'll name rattlesnakes, they'll name alligators and whatnot. And then I point up to the sun. All plants have to put up with intense sunshine and loss of body water. And one of those that has solved the problem is silverleaf sunflower. And if you get close enough, or you can get close enough with your hand to feel, the leaves are just as soft as they can be. And when you try to get close to see what causes that, it's little tiny hairs all over the leaf, and they throw shadows. And the shadow then cools the leaf, and it's not out in the sun. Even though it's standing in the sun, it's not really picking up sunshine. So those tiny little white fuzzy hairs are the key to survival for the silverleaf sunflower.
But it's not until you live on a barrier island that you truly learn just how fierce the weather is.
You bet.
And how abrupt it can change.
You bet.
And how hot it gets and how
Caustic the
stifling.
salt is. The salt will eat anything.
Anything and everything.
Each plant's got its own growth zone out here. And if you look right there, see that bright, shiny place on the leaves of that plant? That's salt that it's had inside its body, and it runs it through little glands and puts it on the outside to get rid of the salt and save the water. And that's all important for that plant to make a living.
The air conditioner was struggling, and we opened up the back of it to see what was wrong, and it was so stuffed with mosquitoes that it couldn't even function. We had to take it off the wall and hose it out. It just
Had a wheelbarrow load of mosquitoes in it. Yeah.
I remember encountering the deer, flea and tick infested deer, and mosquitoes so bad that the deer are walking into the ponds or out
into the surf,
beach and surf just to get away from that infestation.
Yeah. Well, I've seen deer in velvet just covered with mosquitoes on that velvet on their antlers. There's nowhere to go, and they sling their heads and they finally take off running sometimes.
Yes.
I know they go right out in the surf. I don't know whether they just keep going or what, but they die. And you find dead deer on the beach.
Coyotes running
scattered
down.
along. Yeah.
isolated, I think is what it was about it.
Isolated, feeling of self-independence, of wanting to take care of yourself. And it's just so quiet and peaceful. Like we are right now. You can hardly hear anything except me talking.
The remnants of a shirt I used to have. The rest of the shirt is worn out. Just make good use of it.
Sea oats, S-E-A-O-A-T-S. As much as you see growing up on the dune, there's at least that much growing down in the sand. It really has a massive root system. You can see it exposed right there. See all the roots? And that's what holds the dunes in place. If we have a storm or hurricane, it's okay if it does, as long as it doesn't tear up the sea oats. But if it tears up the sea oats, then the dune's in trouble. It disintegrates.
Well, of course, my whole experience was teaching. Taught 30 years at Victoria College. And so when the position out here opened up and I found out it was a teaching position, they wanted people to learn and someone to instruct them. Well, that was right down my alley.
This sand is from the excavation of the burrow. And I'm about to dig down and try to find the crab at the bottom of this burrow. See the hole? I'm trying to follow the hole and not let the sand collapse on top of it. That is an iconic member of the beach fauna. Atlantic ghost crab. They can scoot across the beach in a hurry and pop in a hole and they just look like they disappear like a ghost. They're the fastest crustacean in the world. 3 meters per second. Yeah, they are really something. Okay, you see all that digging? Mm-hmm. You see how deep that went? That's his home away from home. I mean, he'll go there in storm, winter, summer. Too hot, he goes down in there to get cool. Too cool, he goes down there to get warm. He avoids his principal predators, or wild hogs, and badgers, and coyotes, and larger birds, and he avoids all those by popping in a hole. And he is perfectly adapted to living in that sand. He's got special little gills that take water right out of the salt water. Leave the salt and saves the water like an RO machine. And those occur at the bases of his legs. Now this one is only about a third the size it'll get. This is a first-year crab. Next year it'll be about twice that size, and the third year, bigger yet, and probably die. Now these little fellows are key to the health of the beach. If you find these on the beach, you got a healthy beach. If you oil your beach, this will be one of the first critters that gets the oil and dies. So we're glad to see a healthy population of little ghost crabs out here.
I remember when Doc first brought us out here as Master Naturalist, we each caught one of those, and we sat around in a little semicircle up there on the foredunes while Doc talked about them. There's an old beat-up map of Matagorda Island, and he would always wheel it out and start talking. I was a student with the Texas Master Naturalist when we first met. My wife and I had just moved to the area, and we looked around and we said, look at all the stuff that's here, and we don't know a thing about it. Answered an ad in the newspaper for training with the Texas Master Naturalist. We joined, and it was astounding. There was just so much knowledge transmitted and so much enthusiasm for the life that lives there that you just had to get involved. I heard Doc talking about being an educator, and he is that. But he's also maybe the last of the true naturalists left in the world, because he knows about the entire system out here and is willing to talk about it.
Stick their little siphons out so you can see how they make their living.
It's all connected, you know, and that's one of the things that Doc and Martha have transmitted to us.
Where our boathouse is, where we're standing, right here, that's Bray Cove. And Bray Cove then brings us here, and here we are on the backside of Matagorda. And look behind you and those shrubs that are sticking up in the salt marsh. The bigger things, they're not quite trees, but they're shrubs. What is it?
Black mangrove.
Black mangrove.
Okay, some of you know, and some of you may have never heard, but black mangroves are becoming more and more common out here on the island and up and down the coast as well. We are on the northern border of the growth of the black mangrove. Because we've had a series of years which weren't unusually cold, the mangrove has grown and grown and grown, and it's pretty tall right now. But if we get a bad winter, it'll cut it back to the ground and have to start over again. All right, so that's where it is geographically. Where is it ecologically? Out in the salt marsh. That's where you look for black mangroves, on the edge or out in the middle of the salt marsh. No other big trees out there as far as you can look, and you got to ask why. Why can the black mangrove make it out there and other things can't? So here comes the third question. What does it do? What does it do? What's it got to survive out there? And here's one problem it's got. Substrate, anchor, anchor, anchor. It's hard to anchor yourself in something that has the consistency of oatmeal, because you put your roots out, the wind comes along and just tears you loose, and you can't take it. But obviously the black mangrove's got something going for it. So if you go out there and dig around and look at it, here's what you find. Take a wagon wheel in your mind, think of a wagon wheel, turn it flat, put it on the ground, and let the hub represent the trunk of the mangrove tree, and all the spokes going out laterally would be the roots of the mangrove. And what it does is send its roots out horizontally instead of down deep. And they work just like the cables on a microwave tower. You pull out those cables tight, and no matter which direction the wind blows from, the cables will hold it upright. And that's the way the mangrove makes it out here. Its root system pulls against itself. So when you look at the mangroves then, you think about them as something that's got something going for it. And any bird, any mammal, any reptile, any plant you see, you can ask the same questions about it and begin to learn its ecology. And you don't have to go to Africa. You can do it right here on Matagorda Island. It's just starting to bloom now. M-A-L-L-O-W, not mellow like a marshmallow, but a marshmallow. And it's one of the prettiest wildflowers on Matagorda.
Feels like home?
Not till I get to the beach yet. this is nice. It brings back memories, good memories.
Oh, there it is. That little thing right there.
Okay.
I read in your book you said you'd give up your PhD before you give up your WGA.
Yeah, the WGA is an important credential.
What is it?
WGA, World's Greatest Authority. That's the badge you get when you walk into a place and here's 15 people ready to go out on a field trip and you're leading them. You don't know them and they don't know you and you don't know where you're going, and that's when WGA comes in. You're the world's greatest authority. Many's the time I've been at that little boathouse out there waiting, and here comes the boat loaded with kids across the bay, and you begin to wonder, God, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? And how are we going to handle this group of kids? And it always works out. The best thing to do is not worry about it. Take them to a part of the island you like and let them start looking and talking, and pretty soon you got things going.
I remember one Master Naturalist class where he put the brakes on and jumped out of the truck and grabbed a rattlesnake and brought it back to the cow trailer, we called it, and he said everybody was pouring out the sides.
Those are good groups of people. You drive along and see a horned lizard and stop, and they all pile out like it was the last horned lizard in all the world. Shot out with their cameras and questions, and that's when WGA comes in.
He's so beautiful.
Isn't he pretty? This is a Texas horned lizard. He's not only the state reptile, but he's on the state threatened list, primarily because of traffic, habitat destruction, and fire ants, all giving him trouble. But here on Matagorda, they're doing well. Awaken the sense that you don't have to go to Africa or South America or anywhere. Just go right outside and start looking at what's around you. And pretty quick you'll learn that nature's where you are. All you have to do is look out and take advantage of it. It's a matter of, awakening the comprehension of what's around you in the outdoors, and the notion that it's fragile, yet worth saving. You make those points continually while you're out with a group, and it begins to sink in. Well, y'all did pretty good. You got about half a dozen kinds of fish. Camphor.
Camphor.
C-A-M-P-H-O-R.
Is that what they sell in the drugstore?
Yeah, same stuff. I don't think they don't extract it from this plant, but it has the same stuff in it. It detracts things from grazing on it. Well, I think there's no question her principal enjoyment is beachcombing. That's why she wanted to come out here in the first place, and that's where she went every time she has a chance. Beachcomb, beachcomb. You wouldn't believe the mountain of trash we've got at home in Victoria.
And we threw out a whole lot of stuff when we went home, too. All my treasures.
We've been a team ever since the University of Texas at Austin, where we got married.
He leads in front and I lead from behind.
Whatever we're into, she's into the middle of it. And I'll follow along.
I like the wild things and nature of all sorts, but I'm not the natural teacher he is. He's basically a ham. He likes to get out there and perform, and I don't. I much prefer to just walk behind and talk to one person at a time. But I can always ask him if I'm stumped. I can always say, "What is this?" And that's useful. My encyclopedia I carry with me.
Very few scientists are capable of writing.
That's true enough.
I think it comes from my years at the college, talking to students.
No, you always wrote. He edited his school paper.
Oh, well, that was
But you were always a writer.
long ago.
He writes, and he builds, and I sand and paint.
They're what? Triple tails. Oh,
Baby triple tails.
You can't fix with paint and sandpaper something that isn't well built in the first place. He does building. Oh, and I drew the pictures for the Life of Matagorda book.
I'm used to writing, write my lectures and whatnot for school, so it comes pretty easily, and it's fun. I enjoy it.
Keep
I feel
a diary
accomplished.
every day.
And I get done with a project, and she takes it over and edits it and polishes it and gets it the way we want it.
Your books are a way of
Giving back. Giving back, because we've got a lot to be thankful for being out here and being on my place, and I just feel like we owe it to somebody out there to give back.
Of all the coastal islands, or what are some things that make this stand out?
Lack of a causeway would be right near the top of the reason. This place is still wild. It hadn't been ruined. It's one of the few barrier islands still in a halfway intact state.
You've got the beach, you've got the dunes, you've got the, they call them uplands, the center of the island, and then you've got the estuarial system over on the bay side.
Yeah.
And that mixture is not found in many places left in the world. A moment ago, I heard the bird's wing as he went past my head. There's not many places where you can sit down and hear the world talk to you. And this is one of them.
To show you how it goes, not many people know it, but right there in that building, I sat with a committee of federal and state people, and they came ever so close to deciding to make this a resort type of island. The idea was to revamp that building so it could be used as offices and tourist stops. There was a design to have a swimming pool and several little motel-like outbuildings, and all of this was to come about with funds that were going to be readily available. And in addition to that, they'd have to have a causeway from the mainland to the island so that people could use it. They wanted to really vamp this island up, and the main goal was to get more people out here. Fortunately, all of that fell through, not just for financial reasons, but for logical thought. It was in the works for a while, and people were really excited about it. It's real hard to do nothing. You know, you feel like you got to get out and chop something down or do something each day, and it's hard just to leave it alone and walk around it and leave it the way it was when you came. We own 177 acres on the Guadalupe River, and it's just a beautiful place. It's untouched, no cattle, no nothing like that on it, and I've lived on it all my life. I had to leave it to come out here, and I missed it, so I'm, in a sense, glad to be back on it again. And then I thought, well, if the land's been so good to me, I'd like to do it a good turn and write about it. I came here to get to know this piece of land, and through it to know myself. In fine, I wanted to learn how to live and then get on with it. I have been working at that for over 3/4 of a century now, and I am tolerably pleased with the result. Pope set the notion to pleasing bucolic meter. Happy the man whose wish and care a few paternal acres bound, content to breathe his native air in his own ground. Now, this is surely not the prettiest or the most productive piece of land hereabouts, but for me it is special because it is the home place. The view from this bluff is always worth taking in, and I can look clear to the horizon for the distinctive triangular oak copse that marks the site of the summer solstice, as precisely as the site at the tip of a rifle barrel. I know the smell of spring, and I can divine the mood of the river by the sound it makes as it dashes through the sandstone rubble at the foot of the bluff. Sometimes in high reverie I can even convince myself that I am an accepted and integral part of what goes on here. After all, this bluff in its own inert way must be as thoroughly familiar with me as I am with it. We are, I like to believe, good friends.